Okie doke. Are we ready, Cindy? One more? Okay.
And then I gotta get the thumbs up from the back.
Okay.
Oh, this one's set.
Okay, I'd like to call to order the City of St. Helena Special City Council meeting, Tuesday, February 12th, 2019. I'm going to ask City Clerk Cindy Shafopoulos to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Ready?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And now we'll have the roll call, please.
Mayor Ellsworth,
Here.
Vice Mayor Doreen.
Here.
Councilmember Koperstein,
Here.
Shuto,
Here.
Knudsen.
Present.
And now we have public comment. Under California law, public comments at special meetings are limited to subjects on the agenda only. Therefore, public comment will take place during consideration of the item, and each person's comments shall be limited to 4 minutes. So now we'll move to the Planning Commission and Active Transportation and Sustainability applicant interviews. So we'll begin with interviewing the applicants for the Planning Commission. My agenda says 2 applications were received from Autumn Anderson and Richard Wallach for 1 available term expiring June 30th, 2020. Do we have an order? We can do it alphabetically if that's acceptable. Is that?
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
My decision to make.
Everybody, okay. So, yes, Autumn, please. Thank you.
Hi.
Thank you. Thank you for submitting your application. Do you have a few words for us, and then I think we'll have some questions? Or would you prefer that we start with questions?
It's up to the applicant. If you want to address us, that's fine, and we can ask questions also.
You can start with questions.
All right.
Do we have an initial?
Well, I'm happy to start, I think, and, I have a couple of questions here. I'm not sure I'll use them all, but just tell us about why you're interested in the Planning Commission. That's a good place to start.
Okay.
Thank you.
I am a Napa Valley native. I grew up in Napa. I moved to St. Helena in 2005. It's a long-term local, and I am currently on the Parks and Recreation Commission, and that has been going very well. Raising a family in St. Helena has kind of made me want to be even more involved. I'm a little more vested in the future of the city, wanting to make sure that things are going well for my kids. And I think that the Planning Commission right now is in a good position to bring about positive change, and I think that I, as a long-term local and mother, could help bring about some sustainable change and give some beneficial points of view.
Serving on the Planning Commission is a group process that involves group deliberation and consensus building. Can you tell us about your past experiences in group decision-making?
Yeah, I like, thinking things through and working with others, taking other people's points of view into consideration before coming to a conclusion with things. I play well with others, which I think would be really helpful in this situation. Yeah.
Talk about your experience on the Parks and Recreation Committee.
On the Parks and Recreation Committee, we've successfully moved forward with the tennis courts, which is wonderful. I have been assigned to Wapo, McCullough, and Hunts Grove. So we've been looking at opportunities to develop Hunts Grove and improve the dog park and Wapo Park and all of that. It's been a really good experience being able to get our project moved forward and feel like we're making a difference in the community.
I have a hypothetical question that I will read it because I want to present it to both of you. You'll have the benefit of listening to it, but unfortunately, I'm a trial lawyer and I like to use hypothetical questions from time to time. The public hearing is filled with people vehemently opposed to the applicant's request to tear down a modest older home and rebuild it to the maximum floor area ratio allowed in the zone. Every person in opposition to the project comes to the podium to speak against the project. Besides the applicant, there is no one at the hearing in support of the applicant's request. However, the request is supported by the policies adopted by the city's general plan and zoning ordinance. How would you use the testimony at the public hearing in formulating your decision?
Well, you do have to listen to everybody's opinion, but if it falls within the guidelines of the code, then it needs to be approved. So I do understand that sometimes the current general plan and the code aren't always aligned. And I think that listening to people's comments is something that would be taken into consideration for a different step to align the general plan and the code with what people want the community to progress as going forward. That makes.
I'll ask one more question, then I'll pass it over. I may have others after they ask questions, but are there particular issues that you think that the Planning Commission should be focusing on right now? Issues of interest to you in particular?
I'm really interested in seeing the 2040 general plan completed and seeing that aligned with the municipal code entirely. I think that's a big step.
Thank you.
Have any other questions? Mary, do you have
Do you think that your background and your current occupation, your marketing focus, do you see that bringing anything in particular to how you would work on the Planning Commission? Or maybe you could just talk about how that helps you organize your thoughts, or, what you think it could do as far as adding to a group of 4 other people.
Yeah, I think marketing is a lot of, has a focus on soft skills and taking people's opinions and feelings and emotions into consideration. So I think that would be the aspect of marketing that would be the most helpful for the Planning Commission. Just understanding what people want and where those wants come from.
All right. My question, thank you for being here and thank you for doing this. I know that getting up to the podium can be intimidating in the structure, and I so appreciate that you're here and you're doing it.
Thanks.
So I want to ask you about your strengths. So that too, I know can be hard to answer. So think about it in terms of if you have a team and there's this great team and you're all working together, what do they walk away saying, this is what Autumn brings to the table. This is why we love working with her. What are your biggest strengths?
Pragmatism. And I don't know, sensibility. I'm a really level-headed person. So I think that and just being really organized and thorough with things.
Thank you.
I just to kind of get a sense of the planning commission is so sort of integral in helping the city realize its vision, right? Of course, it also depends on individual property owners and incentives that we may give or not give or concerns. I mean, it's a process, right? And by going through the process, you're able to pull out sort of the will of the people, so to speak. So divorced from that, what do you think, just your musings at home, what are the major issues for St. Helena over the next 10 years? If you don't mind. I'd just be curious as to, your thoughts about that.
We're always looking for free advice.
Yeah, right. Main Street is a big one. There are a lot of empty spaces, and the spaces that are full are fairly repetitive with what they offer. I think finding a way to diversify Main Street and make it more sustainable long-term and focused on locals would be helpful.
Thank you. I have one more question for you. Actually, just a comment. Actually, I thank you for applying, and also thank you for your service on Parks and Rec, because I think it really speaks well to our community that we have people that are willing and interested in serving, and then it's often thankless, but
Often?
well, it can be. And so I just want to make sure that we as a council thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The one question I had deals with the Planning Commission is an arm of the City Council that often gets into deep detail on specifics. Are you comfortable with, or sort of have the patience to deal with long, dry documents and that sort of thing to sort of dig down in?
I do. I read your agendas now, so.
Okay. And then I also, I think that sort of the question about where you see St. Helena going, do you have a willingness to kind of bring a proactivity to the role, as well as just responding, but to bringing thought forward? I think we're going to need innovation here, how we manage our small space. Do you feel that you can bring a sort of a proactive approach as well?
Yeah, I do. I understand that there's a pretty delicate balance to strike with progress. And I think that's something that I'm prepared to tackle. So.
Very good. Is there any final comments? Any closing?
No, I think we covered it.
Well, thank you very much.
I want to have
Yeah,
an opportunity to follow up on something that you stated in your application, because I want clarity on it. It says, I aim to make preserving the integrity of our community for future generations by upholding the standards set forth in the general plan a priority. What do you mean preserving the integrity of the community?
Well, to me, what the general plan currently states doesn't align with what has been occurring in the community. And I don't see I don't see what our current state as something that's what we want it to be as a community.
Can you provide a few examples of how you think that the current general plan does not align with some of the things that are happening in the city?
I know, he's working on it.
Sorry. Yes. I can. I've drawn a blank at the moment.
And I'm not here to put you on the spot. I was
Yeah.
just curious. I wanted you to have the chance to
Yeah.
clarify what you mean by that.
I
And it's
think-
not a big deal for me.
Yeah, I just think that my main concern is just raising a family and making sure that we stay a family-friendly community and kinda-
Understood.
Yeah.
I think all of us have that same inclination, so thank you. All right, and thank you for applying. I'll say that again.
Thanks.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, and then our next applicant is Richard Wallach.
Good evening. I go by Rich.
Okay, Rich.
I did the formal thing for filling it out. I guess a few introductory words. Why am I here? I've just moved to St. Helena. We had our home completed in May of 2018, and we moved here from Bay Area. So I am currently fully retired, so I have some more time, and in order to keep peace at home, I need to find something to do. So I had an interest in the development of the property that we've had. Fortunately, most of the work was done prior to me. My wife and I came up a couple years earlier to look for property and that could be developed. We only found 3 lots in town that were available at the time to be developed, and one of them you couldn't really get to because it wasn't even listed. Turns out, strangely enough, the lady we rented temporarily from had one of the 3 lots. And that was Kathy McBride. So that ended up being something that we could move forward with, and we're very pleased to be here. We love the city and don't miss the congestion of the Bay Area in the least. So I had an interest in the planning operations and attended. Actually, I watched your podcast of the last Planning Commission, which proved to me I don't know as much as I thought I did about the actual planning rules and the setback requirements and density, and so I've got quite a bit to learn in that area to be up to the level that the current planning commissioners have, but I'm willing to take that on. So go ahead with the questions.
I'm going to ask some of the same questions I asked of Autumn, just out of fairness to both of you. I think we talked about that. You've talked a little bit already about why you're interested in serving on the Planning Commission, so I don't know if I need to ask that again. But the other few that I have, I'll start with this one. Serving on the Planning Commission is a group process that involves group deliberation and consensus building. Please describe your past experience with group decision-making.
Okay. I've been a project manager in the development of oil and gas properties and other related things for probably about 30 years. So in each of those locations, you end up with a new team. Like the job I did at Avila Beach, I had a new team with Jacobs Engineering that we had to pull together to figure that out. The job I did in Indonesia, I was construction manager for a geothermal power plant, and the team we pulled together with interviews and stuff was completely new to each other and to me. So you end up with people you have to learn how to work with and how to get the best thoughts of each of those people pulled together to end up with a successful project. And I think I can say all of my projects were successful. The one I filled out in the application was the most challenging one to pull a team together because of the adversarial situation of the company I worked for. Over 100 years of operation had managed to pollute this downtown area of Avila Beach. And we had to move about 30 or 40 people from their residence, tear them down, excavate the property, and turn it back over to, well, redevelop the city streets, et cetera, and get consensus. And there was no mayor. There was no city council. It was a town, but it wasn't incorporated. So we ended up having to develop a commission of local residents to give us the input needed to move forward. So that was the most challenging one, in addition, because you had all the regulatory agencies, and I had to go in front of the California Coastal Commission because it was within the 100, I think it's 100 yards jurisdiction of the Coastal Commission. So that was quite a challenging project to start out with something that was very adversarial and end up with something that everybody was happy with. All right. I'd say most people were happy with. I don't think I satisfied everybody.
Let me throw my hypothetical at you, and I'll read it verbatim to be fair. The public hearing is filled with people vehemently opposed to the applicant's request to tear down a modest older home and rebuild it into the maximum floor area ratio allowed in the zone. Every person in opposition to the project comes to the podium to speak against the project. Besides the applicant, there is no one at the hearing in support of the applicant's request. However, the request is supported by the policies adopted in the city's general plan and zoning ordinance. How would you use the testimony at the public hearing in formulating your decision?
Okay, so as I understand the statement, the development meets the city administrative codes.
Correct.
But there is objection, and on your last podcast, there was a couple of objections to what eventually went forward. So I guess the issue is to listen to the residents to see, is there something that maybe wasn't considered that either could be incorporated into the development or was overlooked in the review process. So I guess that's the first part, is to just confirm that, are these just complaints like the one that's the one that I listened to most recently was a home that was moving from 1 story to 2, blocking views and sunlight and et cetera, which would upset the neighbors that were potentially developing other property. So I understand that, is there anything else that could or should have been done to minimize that impact? And if not, you approve the thing because it's in compliance, and I would assume NOAA's recommendation would be for approval. But if you do find something that is overlooked or might minimize the impact to the neighbors, then I think you'd want to look at least making a recommendation that be considered.
Are there particular issues you think the Planning Commission should be focusing on?
Well, one I went through was water. We're obviously in a town with a limited water supply, and each new development has to provide offsets for that, whatever the impact of the increase in number of bedrooms is. That's not an easy solution. I mean, I ran into that one of the rules was that they wanted me to, gotta be careful how I characterize this to get it right. They wanted me to store a 100-year storm worth of water. Concept being, okay, if you can store the water, then you don't need to use it for irrigation during the spring and summer. Unfortunately, the 100-year storm turned out to be somewhere between 20 and 40,000 gallons of water, which was more property than I had. So the concept is important, that we've got to do something to continue to develop the properties. And there's a lot of single level, smaller properties that may be developed. It seems like most of the things that are developed are going from a single story to 2 stories and more bedrooms where that is allowed by the code. So we're running out of water, and I keep seeing all the water going down Spring Creek, trying to figure out how we can do something with that. Obviously you can't, but so anyway, that's a challenge that we've got property that could be expanded, and I don't know how we're going to end up with enough water to end up meeting those requirements.
I'll stop for now.
Any questions from, do you want to jump in, Mary?
What brought you to St. Helena? Of all the places you could decide to go when you retired?
Well, we've known the wine country for some time. My nephew is the chief financial officer for Cliff Letty in Yountville. So our family reunions are in this area each year. So I know the area, and we kind of got fed up with the congestion. My home was in Orinda, and great place to raise kids, and but we decided that after being in the same place for 40 years, it was time to do something different. So we came up here to look for property and really stumbled onto this one that was available, and I've been happy that we did so. We're very pleased with the location and the town.
I want to ask my strengths question. So what are the strengths you think you will add most to the Planning Commission and the St. Helena team in general? All of us working together.
Okay. I think my strength is ability to listen. Avila Beach was an example. Things were not going well initially, and there were 27, if I remember right, different agencies that had some regulatory input to what was going on, from Coastal Commission to Fish and Game to Highway Patrol, because we had to haul all the hazardous material to Bakersfield and congest the highway. So things were not going well. We were having a lot of congestion with different groups fighting each other over who could do what when. So I decided to pull all 27 groups together and see, just to have, and so my concept was, I'm here to listen. I'm not going to make a speech or anything else. But I think it would be helpful if each of you could explain to the rest of the group what you're doing and what impacts you have and conflicts that we can try to work through. It took all of about 4-hour meeting to get through that situation. And fortunately, the Board of Supervisors said that I had to have an ombudsman, that you couldn't just deal with me, because I was the only guy from Unocal in town. Everybody else was a contractor that was working for me. So anyway, I listened to what they had to say, and it was probably most beneficial because I could see what the conflicts were, but so could everybody else. And the ombudsman, I was able to introduce him. Ari Bachrach was his name. And he was fantastic. I mean, he did things like, one lady was very upset because the roses that she had raised for 20 years had to get torn out because we had to dig up the whole front yard in addition to just the house. Ari took the roses, planted them in front of the community center, so that when the house was going to be put back, she could have her roses. So that was the sort of thing that listening and just doing little things like that made a huge difference between when I started in the adversarial situation and where we ended up with most of the people in town very happy with the final result.
Thank you.
I'll ask my 10 years out question. So, sort of divorced from the Planning Commission work itself, what do you see sort of the challenges and opportunities for St. Helena looking 10 years in the future?
One of the things that I saw when we were renting was the large number of weekend occupants and the lack of occupancy during the week on a fair number of properties. And I guess I'd like to see the city evolve into more residents, same number of facilities, but more long-term residents. I don't know how to get there. I mean, you can't, this is an economy that allows people to spend the money that they have to do what they want. And so I don't know how to change that, but if there's anything that we can do to increase the number of long-term residents over second homes, that's something I'd like to see evolve if it's possible. I hope it doesn't change too much, because I'm pretty pleased with the way the house and the housing has developed, but recognize that there's a very limited amount of open land available to develop, and so we're going to be, pretty similar to what we currently have over the next 10 years. We'll have some modernization and expanded facilities probably, but I don't see a huge amount of change and really don't want to see it, to be honest with you. I'm very pleased with St. Helena in its current state.
And once again, thank you for applying. Appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you. So you covered much of this. The interesting thing that I found on your resume was the work in Avila. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Avila
Correct.
Beach.
Yes.
I drove through that area around the time that the remediation was going on, and I recognized the sensitive nature of that town. It's a very charming, small town. I guess I didn't know it was unincorporated, but a very delicate town in an area that had been dealing with pretty substantial impacts. And so I was pretty impressed that the town still looked, and it seemed as though care had gone into what had been done. And knowing the great amount now of coordination that had to be done to do that. So I'm assuming, and this is, I guess, sort of where my question is, it goes to the technical reading, the ability to coordinate these groups and various documents and technical aspects. And that's something you're comfortable with? That's an aspect that you can...
Yeah, on that one, the technical wasn't as difficult as the personalities, in that you displaced 40 people that had to leave and eventually come back. The real estate department took care of that, so I didn't have to deal with that. But I remember coming in, the guy that was in charge of the area had just retired, so I was the new person on the block. And this rather mean-looking individual came up to me and said, "I understand you're the new meat, we're going to get you too." So that was the start of my first meeting. And, it's kind of ominous to have an adversarial start like that. There was no organization of the city, and we can tear things down and put new dirt in, that's straightforward. But you have to decide how wide are the streets going to be. There was an area that was an old trailer park that was going to be turned into a town park. What do you want to put in the town park? Fortunately, we were able to get about 4 or 5 people in the community that were willing to act like a planning commission. I had to fire the initial architect because he wouldn't listen to the locals. He wanted to develop the town his way. And fortunately, the head of the Port San Luis Commission recommended a local architectural firm and a landscape architect that was really good at listening to the people, recognizing that some of the ideas you couldn't do, but putting the individual twist on the development of the property such that the locals could see what they wanted come to fruition. So that was the challenge of that project, was really getting the people to make the decision, because I couldn't. I mean, I can't tell them what they needed to do, and it had to eventually get approved by the County Board of Supervisors. So that was between getting that team together and the landscape architectural firm to take the ideas and put them on paper. That was the part that really worked well and finally turned the thing around to where the people got behind it. We actually, I put a chart together that was how are we doing percent, and one of the criteria was we had to move, if I remember right, 350,000 cubic yards of contaminated soil out of town and bring 350 yards of clean soil back in town before we could even do the development. So we had a chart. How many yards did we move today or each day, so that the people could see where we were, how much time it was going to take to get there, so that they could start finishing the development of their new property so that they could build again. And it helped get everybody focused on not complaining about everything that they saw, but working together to get the thing, because they wanted to get back into town and we wanted to get out of town. So it was a joint situation that turned out positive in the end.
Very good. Are there any final questions or comments? Any final words?
No, I don't think so. I'm just pleased to be here and hope for your positive results. Thank you.
Thank you very much for
Thank you.
for applying.
Thank you both.
So now we're going to move to the Active Transportation and Sustainability Committee. 2 applications were received from Denise Henquet Sprangers and Aaron Dempsey to fill a term of office expiring June 30th, 2020, and 2 alternate positions expiring on June 30th, 2019 and June 30th, 2020. I don't see anybody here. So
Denise reached out to me. I know she asked me to say something on her behalf. She emailed me because she is volunteering. She does Pilates in town, and she's volunteering with the Park and Rec and has a class tonight.
Okay.
So she couldn't come, and just spoke about how she too is very interested in making sure St. Helena becomes family friendly and has a community where everybody loves the outdoors and is biking and walking, and that's what's motivating her and Aaron to do this. So I got an email from Denise.
Okay, great. Thank you. So with that, we'll be making our appointments in the beginning of the next meeting, of the regular meeting. Is that correct?
Under new business.
Under new business. Okay. So we'll adjourn now and then return at 6 o'clock for the regular meeting. Thank you very much for being here and speaking.
I would just like to say thank you to both of you. For me, this is a very difficult decision. Having been in your shoes once and not been appointed, if it's going to happen to one of you tonight, please stay interested, because we always need well-qualified people. Thank you.
It's true, the opportunities keep coming up. I'm seeing them.
Yes, this is the kind of engagement that whatever happens this evening, we need folks participating. So thank you, and hopefully you'll stay engaged. So with that, I will adjourn the meeting, and we'll return at 6.